Yeah, fire away, guys.
I guess the roster is set now then. I mean, this is the new normal? I mean, I guess just...
Yeah, I'm really grateful that we got 5 returning players. I think there's a lot of coaches out there that don't have that luxury, right? So I'm really excited. I think they're the most important guys in the program because they've been here. They've helped establish what we do day in and day out. So yeah, we got, kind of a weird group. We've got 5 returning guys, 5 freshmen, 5 transfers. I don't know if that'll ever happen again. But yeah, 15 scholarships, obviously. There's going to be a lot more competition. Playing time, well, it'll all work itself out, but I think in the summer it's going to be great. Kids won't have to have as many reps. I think you got to be careful as a head coach of overdoing it. But we'll be able to do quite a bit with 15 guys.
You talked a lot about the end of the season going out and getting a center. I guess everyone kind of imagined you're going to find some shiny 7-footer, back to the basket kind of guy. What was that process like? You eventually get a guy like Gary, you get a guy like Zach. What was that process like looking for a center to help, rebuild that front court?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of ups and downs with that. Really, really excited to get Zach. I think Zach has real size. He's every bit of 6'10". He's really, really big. And then he's also skilled. Gary's not as tall, but Gary's very versatile, and Gary can do a lot of different things. So I think those 2 guys will give us a really good 1-2 punch. And then, Carson Templin is a guy that's got a ton of game experience. We started him in the biggest game of the year against UCLA. So I always tell the guys, you don't have to be the biggest, right? I think so many fans, it's funny, my mom's husband, he was a big donor of ours at Fairmont State many, many years ago, and that's all he talked about was big guys, big guys, big guys. Big guys come in different sizes. Some guys play bigger. I think Carson Templin does that. So to get a true 7-footer that can shoot threes, block shots, run, jump, isolate, I'd have to give up my whole salary for that. So there's got to be some give and take, but I think those 3 kids collectively, along with David, will be much more athletic, versatile, I think, on the front line than last year.
So are you targeting 3-point shooting bigs, as a means to have some more versatile lineups?
Yeah, I think, the way we want to play with space, you got Colby, you got MJ, you got Mason, you got Drake, you got guys that can really drive the ball. The more space you allow those guys to have with a non-plotting big, I think you're more versatile. If you look at some of the great teams out there, the 5s can shoot. I mean, you watch in every NBA game, Al Horford and these different guys, they're the difference makers. And I think Zach could be that.
What was the biggest surprise? I mean, people talk about Dayton.
I would say the money. Yeah, I would say the money this year. When you have 2 pots of money, it's a heck of an advantage, right? We only have 1 pot, and that's whatever our donors give us. So we're not sharing any revenue from the school, right? The school is not giving us any revenue to pay our team or any of the athletic teams. So when you have 2 pots of money, obviously that's a big deal to a lot of these schools. So I think the biggest shocker to me was the price on the players, right? From 1 through 5, every position, everything has went up. I think last year, if you looked at it in the Mountain West, you could say you could get a good player, a starter, for anywhere from 125 to maybe 300, right? Now I would say the prices went from probably 225 to 250, maybe to well over $1 million. I think the prices for players and all of that has been just a shocker to me. I don't think any of us were anticipating that. The second biggest shocker has been the way the community has stepped up. It's been incredible. Guys like Kevin White, guys like Ken Alder, guys like Jim Lobb, all our different donors. We're over 9 guys that have given over $100,000. We couldn't say that a year ago. Last year we were the lowest budgeted team in America to get an at-large bid, right? So if you look at 36 teams that made it, we spent $800,000 on our team, and it was the lowest budgeted team of anybody in the country, right? That's a heck of a thing for our players, but that's not something we want to hang our hat on, right? We want to continue to raise money and get to the top 4. I think we'll be in the top 4 this year in dollars spent on our roster.
When Ian graduates, he leaves. He was responsible for a lot of the scoring, but looking at this new roster, it didn't look like he had somebody that just came in and plugged in like he did. Is this just going to be everybody's got to elevate? You can't just go to one or two.
Yeah, I thought you guys did a tremendous job. About 3 episodes ago, you guys talked about this, and I don't know if it was you or Jason that mentioned this, but we have a lot of different guys that can do it. Whether that's Gary Clark, a guy that can score, Colby, MJ, obviously Mason, Carson Templin, Drake Allen. We'll probably be more of a committee type team this year, which I think we need to. I think the best way to make sure that we're in a position to go to the NCAA tournament is to improve our defense and become the best defensive team in the league. I think we have real versatility. I thought you guys made great points with MJ and Colby that day. We'll be very versatile defensively, right? What I mean by that, we can switch, we can play man-to-man, we can play our matchup. We'll be able to do quite a bit, but I don't know if you'll be able to replace a Ian Martinez nowadays with the way things cost, right? If Ian Martinez went in the portal, this year, he would probably be $1.5 to $2 million, right? You just can't. You don't have the money to do that. So I think it's going to get harder and harder when we lose these great players like that. We got to rely on the development of our freshmen and then plug in some of these transfers. And I think that's why it's so critical to continue to recruit high school kids, because you're trying to get the next Ian Martinez or the Mason Falslivs and keep them, hopefully for 4 years.
You talk about development, and we may not think of Mason Falls as development, but he's the guy who's going from sophomore to junior.
Yep.
There are guys who go from that, they score 13, 14, they can jump to like 19 or 20, like Donovan Dent did that last year.
Yep.
Is that a jump that you kind of, obviously you hope to see it from, but you feel that's possible for him to make that kind of jump to at least, again, partially replace some of Ian Martinez?
I think he's got a shot. You don't want to put too much pressure on a guy, but the expectation is for him and, Magoon Guath, and I would say those two guys should be up for preseason player of the year in the conference. I think Magoon is just so naturally gifted. He impacts the game. I think Mason impacts the game in a lot of ways. Where Mason really impacts us is his leadership as well, his day-to-day habits. But certainly he's got to, continue to shoot the ball. I thought he shot the ball at a really high clip. Develop a left hand, right? Develop a mid-range game. And I thought he was great, the latter part of the season on his free throws. So, yeah, I think the beautiful thing about him is he's going to put in the effort. We got to get these guys. One thing we've talked about these guys is putting in more time on their own. I think that's an area where we lacked. They got to understand every day counts. And he's a guy that if he can help lead that in a few weeks here when everybody reports back, he certainly can make that jump.
Kind of along those ways with Templin too. He was scoring a lot more in the first part of the season and kind of slowed down. He really got beat up as time went on. Was that the biggest factor?
Yeah, his knee. He took his knee, his ankle. He was really banged up. We had 2 kids in boots, and actually they found a fracture in Mason's foot, so he was actually playing on a fractured foot probably the last month of the season. Ian was in a boot. He's finally out of it, and then KT was hurt. So 3 of our top 8 or 9 guys. I think one area that, myself and the coaches staff were on high alert was how our defensive, kind of faltered, probably the last 8, 9 games of the year. We've went back and dissected every which way, but part of it was, our best players are pretty banged up. So we've got to do a better job, be able to sustain that throughout the whole course of the year. I don't think we overdid it in practice. I think there were some unfortunate things. But, I certainly think that'll, have a big impact on it.
You mentioned defense, and I don't know, for me, I talk about the roster, like the length was a big thing for you guys. Is that something where you guys were looking to add that length so you could have that versatile length, the 2, 3, and 4 positions?
Yeah, I think, Boise addressed that as well. They just signed a 6'11" kid at the center and a 6'7" kid at the point guard, the UCLA point guard. So I think as you didn't really know about the Mountain West, right? Obviously, I can study it, I can watch it, I can look at numbers. I'm an analytics guy. Now I know it, right? So now I know it inside and out. Some people gave us an A minus, whatever the case may be. But the bottom line is at Utah State, you're going to be judged on championships, right? Whether it's regular season or tournament. Let's call it like it is. Nobody has won 2 games in the NCAA tournament, right, ever in the history of this program. So that's a realistic goal that we should try to attain, Jason. I think the only way you attain that is by getting more athletic, right? When you go to play these Power 4 teams now, at every position, the size is it's remarkable how big and strong these guys are. I get into these heated debates with these old timers about today's NBA or, 90s NBA, right? I love having those conversations because it's real. I mean, when you're watching the NBA, you're seeing 7-footers shoot threes. You're seeing 6'11" guards. I mean, it's crazy the length and skill. So with David, he's 6'9", extremely long, athletic. Adlin, the sky's the limit for him. Kingston Tosi obviously is coming in probably as the most heralded guy in that class. He can do it all. He can shoot threes. He's long. He's athletic. He's got a motor. So those three kids, you'll see, they look like power 4 guys with their length. Now the size, so that's what we tried to address. And then we wanted to be more versatile, as we talked about the defense.
Kind of on Kingston, I mean, when I looked at it, I basically have like no data on him for his 3-point shooting. Is that something that he's really worked on? So the small sample size I had was kind of...
Yeah, I think Kingston can shoot. I think he's a tremendous cutter. I think he's an extremely gifted athlete. Comes from a competitive family. Dad played in the NFL. He competes. That's one thing that I like. But the reality of it is it's going to take these guys 3 to 4 months, these high school kids, to settle in and see what it looks like day to day. And that's why my point, being is the returning players are going to be the key to your team, right? These impactful guys like Colby and Zach and Gary and Luke and, the list goes on and on. Like what Dexter Connell did last year is very hard to do, right? He came in, he started every game at Oregon State pretty much, most of them the last 2 years. He didn't start at Marquette, but came in and took a 6-man role, right, and had great humility. That's hard to do in this era of me, right? And I think we're going to miss Dexter O'Connell. I think Alban Gadaretsky, for some of his shortcomings, was one of the best teammates I've ever coached, right? So you never know how good you have it. You always think, hey, you're going to, we experienced it at West Virginia when we went to the Sweet 16 the first year, right? And then the next year we lost in the first round. Then we went to the Final Four, and we thought, fourth year we're gonna be right back in the Final Four. Well, it's not how life works, right? So you got to be really grateful for the guys you have. And I think those 3 seniors did a little bit of everything that didn't always go in the books, like Martinez scoring, but it was Gadaretsky's humility, and same thing with Dex. Like those kids are just wonderful kids. So you never know fully what you're getting in the portal. So we need our returning guys to really, really establish that from day one.
It's so crazy with the whirlwind of how things are now. Do you have any time at all to reflect on the season that you had? I mean, being picked where you were. I know you guys had expectations and goals and planned on being where you finished, but most people didn't have you picked there at all.
Yeah, I mean, they had us pick 6. We finished 3rd. I'd say for 75% of the season, we were the best team in the league, right? We were the best non-conference team. We had the best net. We had really the best resume of anybody in the conference. So to not win it or not get a share of it, I think that stings, right? So you reflect on that. I know that's what I reflect on. You got to be very grateful for 26 wins and an NCAA tournament appearance. Hard to do. But the reality of it is, like I said, it's Utah State. We're based on championships, right? We're judged. The recent stretch we've had is incredible. So that's why I think it's really important to understand from a fan base how important the NIL is, and to contribute to winning the monthly donations, the different things that the businesses could do to help our team. Without a good product, nobody wants to come to the games, right? The reality is our marketing people can't sell any advertisement if the team stinks. So to me, the most important key is to continue to retain these good players. And we're going to have a whole bunch of them to try to retain for next year as well.
You talked about the returning players having a larger role in helping things moving forward. Even to some degree, the transfer players coming in, there's a certain level of contact you guys can have and a certain level you can't have during this next couple of months. So, like, how much direction do you give them? Like, this is what you need to work on to get to that next level on your own when we're not in contact with you.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we develop a off-season plan for every single guy, right? And we're going to look at every number and break that down from a statistical standpoint, right? Like we're already working on Drake Allen. How can we help him impact the game defensively, right? Like defensive rebounding percentage as a guard needs to be high, right? And he was one of the lowest outside of Donovan Dent. Drake really struggled defensive rebounding the ball, right? He struggled getting through screens. He was really good at creating some turnovers. So just getting these guys to understand, hey, you got to play to your strengths, but this is the time where you got to work on your weaknesses, right? What you do really the next 126 days and we play, that's not that long away, right? So what you do right now will affect those numbers and affect the team and affect really thousands of people that come to the games. So
Well, some of that's mechanically too. Right?
Yeah.
Like how the shot mechanics. And
yeah,
Position. So how do they? Do you like give them recommendations?
Yeah, we'll
Work with
show-
this guy and he'll help you.
Yeah,
I
we'll
can
show-
have contacts with you
Yep.
over this stuff, but here's the direction I want you to go.
Yeah, so we only get 4 hours of basketball a week, and then we get 4 hours in the weight room. So you have to be really strategic on, okay, these days we're doing this days we're doing this. We'll teach them enough in the first 2 weeks that they'll be able to do stuff outside. They'll obviously play pickup quite a bit, which I would encourage you guys to come watch that as well. They'll play and condition on their own quite a bit. But yeah, there are each guy, right, like Carson Templin, his release point, right, where he shoots the ball. Same thing with MJ Collins. We got to work on their release points. Tucker Anderson, I think we got to maybe put some crowd noise in the spectrum or do something every time he shoots, because on the road he shoots better than he does inside the spectrum. So for him to shoot an empty spectrum, I don't think is really going to help his shot. But no, there are a lot of strategical and tactical things we got to try to clean up.
So in terms of three-point shooting, everyone always talks about players improving their three-point shooting over the offseason. What are like realistic expectations for guys to be able? Because like Mason went from 30% last year to I forget, something that either 40% or just under or just over. It's like went from borderline viable three-point shooter to an elite three-point shooter. But how often can that kind of thing happen?
Yeah, I don't mean to sound cocky in this, and don't take it like this because I'm not really that type of guy, but every guy we've ever coached has shot better. There's not a guy that's going to come in here and not shoot better. So if a guy's shooting 31, 32, I bet you he'll venture to say we get him 4 percentage points higher, Jason. And you say, well, why is that? I think it's scheme. I think it's what we run. I think it's all confidence. I think at the end of the day, life is all about confidence. We really empower these guys. Most coaches, they've got, closer rein on offense. I think what makes good offense is total opposite. Let kids take and make shots in the off season that they can't. They'll make them during the season. We did that at Youngstown for years. We took guys that couldn't shoot, come into our program. We tell them they could shoot. We didn't lie to them, and then we let them shoot. I think the same thing with Gary. I think Gary will shoot it better than his numbers. Carson Templin, he was shooting way better than he ever had before, probably since his senior year of high school. He never shot his freshman year. Then he shot this year. So we expect for him to make a jump. But it's also what type of shots are you taking? Are you taking good shots? Or are you taking great shots? Are you taking bad shots? That's a big part of the shot profile that we talk about. Step-in threes, not off-the-bounce threes, not rush threes, and that'll help your percentage as well too.
You mentioned some of your summer plans. You also got your camp coming up in June, right?
Yep. Yeah, we'll have a couple of kids camps, which I think are going to be phenomenal. We will have the biggest team camp in the history of Utah State basketball. We will break, I don't know if it was Stu or Coach Duryea or whoever, they had 86 teams. We're going to have 91 teams. We'll have 30-something different high schools. What that does for this university, you can't really put a value on it because you're bringing hundreds and hundreds of kids onto this campus. It's free advertisement for the admissions office. We've done it for years, and this is really, really going to be a big one. So we've got our team camp, we've got our 2 camps for the little kids, and then we'll do elite camps where we'll get different high school kids from Idaho and Wyoming and all over the country come in here, and they'll get experience a lot of our drills. Our staff works all the camps. I work all the camps. I love camps. I came up under working camp, so I'm in here. Even if I got one knee, I'll be doing the drills with them, so I don't sit around. I don't not show up. I take the camps very serious.
What kind of things did you learn personally as a coach, I guess, over this past year from where you were a year ago, your comfort level in Cache Valley and the league?
Yeah, well, the first thing is I think just the state of Utah is a very basketball-driven place. I think it's one of the biggest sleeping giants there is as far as basketball, whether that's high school basketball, college. I think Coach Jensen will get it going at Utah with Coach Daniels. You get them going. I mean, that's 3. We could have 3 teams in the NCAA tournament. What Todd Phillips did, I really wanted them to make the NCAA tournament. They're probably 4 possessions away. I watched that game. So you're talking about 3 really, really good teams, and you got teams like Utah Valley, these really sneaky teams, Weber State. So I learned that they love basketball. Cache Valley, I learned that, obviously the student section is as good as advertised, if not better, right? I mean, it's elite. They willed us to the Boise State game, right? I still, Don't know how we won that game. I really believe it was because of the spectrum. I thought the San Diego State game was his probably top 5 in my experience, and I've been in almost every venue in the country outside of some ACC teams. That one was electric. I learned that you got to get big and physical. You know, we need to get a little bit more physical, be able to endure. We got to be better defensively. Learn that there's a lot of great coaches. You know, there's a ton of different schemes that you got to prepare for, from the Princeton offense to two bigs with Brian Dutcher to San Jose, sometimes 5 guards, right? Like, you have everybody has drastic differences in this league, right? The Princeton is really Air Force, Colorado State. So you got to be able to prepare a little bit on everything, right? Steve Alford, all these guys can coach. You know, the environments are very real. I thought the game at New Mexico was one of the best I've been a part of, too. I would say San Diego State, Boise State here. At New Mexico, we got off the bus 2.5 hours before. I would have, if we're both good again, I'd tell all you guys need to get to that game. You know, you get off and there's a guy named Snake and he's harassing you. And then as you go into the pit, I'll be honest, I thought they were very nice. I mean, they beat us. You know, usually you're nicer to the opponent, but it was a big time college basketball game. And I thought the Mountain West was better than advertised. You know, you had 2 teams with NCAA tournament games. We should have had 5 teams. We had 4. So, you know, it's going to be interesting. We have to get our work done in the non-league. The 11 games are so important to make sure it carries us, because if you have a down year in league play, it's going to be one less bid, right? So we got to make sure all 11 games make sense. You do got to have 4 or 5 bye games, right? You got to have home games in the spectrum, but you got to get some good neutral site games. We're going to have a game at South Florida, which is on paper a quad 1. We got to add one more. True road games. So we're going to have 2 true road games. We're going to try to add a game in Salt Lake, which would be a quad 2. We need it to be a quad 2. And the formula last year was we were 15-0 against quad 3 and quad 4. We had no bad losses. And that really helped us, right? And then, we played 4 quad 1 and quad 2s non-league. We got to do that again. I think the recipe is 4 quad 1, quad 2s, or 5. You got to play between 4 and 5 of those games. Whether it's neutral or away, you got to get them in, and then you got to win them. So if you have 11, you got to go 9-2. I would say to feel pretty good about going into league play, and then you got to win 14 or 15. So I think the magic number is probably 24, 25 wins a year at this level, and that's hard to do.
Kind of on a similar note, what has this offseason been like compared to last year? Or last year, settling in a new place, trying to scramble to get a roster together?
This has probably been one of the worst for me personally, to be honest with you. Probably the worst. Just from the simple standpoint of the fundraising, right? So typically in May, I was talking to Matt Painter from Purdue about this the other day. He was at a Chicago Cubs game, getting ready to watch the Cubs game, and he was nice enough to take my call. We talked for about 10 minutes. And, a lot of at that level, at the Power 4, they got to do some big fundraising events. Here it's literally every day, 5 days a week, right? So in May, really April, end of April or middle of April, and then all of May, all I've been doing is fundraising, whether it's Salt Lake, Cache Valley, you name it. We're trying to raise dollars for our NIL because we don't have revenue sharing money. So it's been very, very stressful. It's been a lot of hours, a lot of time, and it takes away from your basketball. So I now understand why teams are hiring general managers. It makes a lot of sense to hire a guy that wakes up thinking about money, right? And how can I get money for the football team, the basketball team, the women's volleyball team, the women's basketball team, and so on. I totally get it now. And I don't think like a year ago, I fully got it. So every day you're learning, every year is getting different. It's a changing sport. It's big business. There's no doubt about it. This is all a business, so when people say, hey, why can't you get a 7-footer? Money, right? When everybody complains and says things, it's usually about one thing in college athletics. Unfortunately, Jason, it's about money. I think here what we did last year with the 6th most money in the league is pretty amazing. And I think what we've been able to do from a fundraising standpoint has been pretty amazing, but we're just still not there yet, right? We need a couple more sharks to help out Jim Lott.